بسم الله الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Welcome everybody from around the world. My name is Bilal Abdul Kareem and this is the BAK show wherein we are going to be discussing issues which are important to you and to the Muslim Ummah at large. Of course, I am your host, Bilal Abdul Kareem, and we are coming at you live. We're going to be discussing some things which are of immense importance to the Muslim Ummah. So everybody has got to stay keyed in. We're going to be taking your questions, your comments, and your concerns in just a little while. We've got a lot of things that have been going on, particularly in the Palestinian territories, but it's not limited to there, and we're going to talk about that. But first, I want very much for you brothers and sisters to help us out on a project. This project that we're working on is called Voices of Truth. Voices of Truth is a project wherein we are documenting the war crimes which were committed by the Assad regime. It's a huge project, a huge undertaking. We are interviewing people from all walks of life, men, women, rich, poor, those people who were imprisoned by Bashar al-Assad who managed to survive. They're going to tell us their accounts. And we're also interviewing people whose family members were arrested and they just never returned. We also want to talk to people who did some of the crimes as well. We've been working hard on it, but we need your help. Very briefly, take a look at this video right here of one woman. This will give you an idea in terms of what we're working on. We're doing short interviews, bringing the stories from the mouths of the people who are pressed directly to your ears. Take a look.
يعني شو صار إلى أسنانك بالضبط؟
وقت اللي عذبوني، وقت اللي يسألوني سؤال وما بدي أجاوب عليه يقلعوا لي كل سن ببنسة.
بالبنسل. نعم. وكم أسنان أم شيخ؟
شلعوا لي كل القداميات من تحت من عدا درسين وشلعوا لي 3 من فوق. أثناء تسببوا لي مرض، دخلوني مشفى العسكري بحماه. ضليت فيه 9 أيام.
وما كان المرض؟
مرض النزف من لست أسناني.
نعم. وعند الكهرباء كانوا يكهربوك، كيف هذا كان؟
يقعدوني على كرسي يسألوني أسئلة بدهم ياني أجاوب عليها وأنا ماني قادرة أجاوب عليها ولأنها ما أنا موجودة عندي. يحطوا لي جرية.
This is just a part of one story. There are countless, and we need to document these stories so that the world can know about it and reference it and archive it for generations, years to come. But we need your help. Brothers and sisters, take a look at our crowdfunding page. That's on medina.com/voices of truth. medina.com/voices of truth. I am heading this project, and if you can help us out with $10, $50, $100, whatever you can do, inshallah, it will be in your mizan hasanatik, in your account of good deeds. Particularly, we have now entered, at least where we are, entered into Yawmul Arafah. So this is your opportunity, brothers and sisters. We're really looking forward to it. Okay, everybody. Let's take a look at something here. All right. The Israeli government says that their territory was shelled by Islamic militants from the areas in southern Syria. Now, we're going to pay very close attention to the words their territory because it's actually occupied territory in the Quneitra area, which is not their territory, but they are administering it and controlling it. In other words, they're occupying it. Now, this is Syria. This is the territory that the Syrian government controls. Let's look towards the southern part down here. You've got Damascus, the Israeli occupied territories, as we spoke about, and Suwaidat governorate. This is where the Druze community is, or that's one of their strongholds. And there are many Druze there in that area, and some of them have called for Israeli intervention. Not all of them, but some of them have. Okay, with that in mind, let's take a look at something else. Back in February, this man, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's the prime minister of the state of Israel, he said something that's very important, and I want this to be the backdrop of what we're going to talk about. We demand, quote, we demand full demilitarization of southern Syria from troops of the new Syrian regime in the Quneitra, Dara, and Suwayda provinces. Those are the three areas that we just looked at. Suwayda, the Druze area, Quneitra, the area that they're currently occupying, and the Dara area, which is right on the Israeli border. This is his statement back in February of this year. I've been to those areas, and I could confirm at that time that there were no Syrian government troops in those areas. Okay, now that that's clear, we're going to take a look at this map. Now, this is huge. All right, look, these are the Israeli territories. This is the Israeli occupied Golan Heights. It's not their territory. So we just want to be clear on that. Now, this in green, this is all area, these areas are under the control of Damascus. This is the Dara area. This is Suwayda. Suwayda is the governorate wherein we have the Druze community, and they've called for, or at least some of them, for Israeli intervention. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look and see exactly what took place. Okay, Israeli sources have said that Hispan was hit with rockets that were fired from Tassel. Tassel is an area in Dara under, I don't know if I could say under the control of the government in Damascus, but it's not Israeli territory, because the reason why I'm saying that is because this southern area right here is all where Benjamin Netanyahu demanded that there be no government troops. So this is 12 kilometers from Tassel to Hispan. And according to Israeli sources, the rocket was fired from here over to this area under their control. It landed in open field. There were no casualties. But the response was as follows. They bombed the 121st Brigade, Tel Shaham, Tel Sha'ar, Tel Nal, the 175th Regiment, and a few other places around the country. Okay, now let's talk about this for a second. The first issue is that if you're demanding that there be no government troops in the southern areas, who's supposed to govern these areas? And who could tell who's firing what? Now, I'm telling you from very clear experience that when I went to the Dara area, the people that were there showed me places where Israeli forces very clearly had occupied a small school, and they'd been there for some time and then they left. In other words, if you do not have troops here to govern and to keep security in these southern areas, well, who knows who's firing into those other areas? It could be the Israelis, very clearly, because why would you demand that there be no troops? And then if there is trouble in these areas, then you want to hold the government to account. I believe in Allah knows best, and I want to know what you guys think about this, but this looks very much like a false flag operation. Very much. Because you're talking about sovereign territory in Syria. How can a foreign country or a neighboring country make such a demand that we demand that there be no troops, a demilitarized area in southern Syria? How could you even make that claim or make that case? And then when rockets are fired into your areas, then you want to complain and then say, we hold you to account, as the defense Minister Katz for the Israelis said, and then they bomb these areas in Syrian territory. Now, just to reiterate something that was said by Asad Shaybani, who is the foreign minister under the Ahmed Shara, or formerly known as Abu Muhammad Jolani's government, he said something, and I quote, "We affirm that Syria has not and will not pose a threat to any party in the region." That includes Israel. "The top priority in southern Syria is to extend state authority and end the presence of weapons outside," end quote. Okay. Now that we've said that, we talk to a lot of people, a lot of Syrians from around the country and so on and so forth. And look, maybe what I'm going to say is not going to be popular, but if I didn't love you, I wouldn't tell you. Syrians are saying, we're tired of war. We don't want to fight Israel. We have to rebuild our country. We don't want a conflict with Israel. And I would say, I totally get it. I totally agree with you. Nobody wants to fight Israel. Nobody wants to fight anybody. We shouldn't be in a situation where we want to threaten our neighbors and so on and so forth. But the reality of the situation is that Syrians being tired of war does not in any way, shape, form, or fashion stop the war from coming to them. In other words, if somebody is running from a lion and the lion is chasing after them, just because the person gets tired and says, look, I just want to live, does that stop the lion from attacking them? As you could see, the Israelis are clearly trying to provoke a situation, and if they don't get a willing partner, they're going to come in and invade, which is exactly what they did in the Quneitra area, wherein they took Mount Hermon, or also known as Jebel al-Sheikh, which is 25 kilometers outside of Damascus, and it's the highest point in the area. They occupied those territories, and that happened just after the transition. Transition wasn't even complete from Bashar al-Assad to the new administration. So in other words, it's not as if they had to wait until somebody actually attacked them, because this is the first such attack, if you want to call it that, since the fall of Bashar al-Assad. So it's not a situation where they're responding, because if that was the case, okay, then why did they take Jebel al-Sheikh or Mount Hermon? Why did they take those territories? They took those territories. That was a response to an attack. And in addition to that, they bombed the military sites all around the country. Some 300 different airstrikes were launched in Syrian territory on the weeks after the fall of the government of Bashar al-Assad. Nobody had attacked them. So I'm saying to the Syrian people, I understand you're weary and you're tired, just like the Afghan people were weary and tired of war. But the reality of the situation is that the war is coming, and it seems to be coming to the people. And I think that that dynamic of preparing for it has to take precedence over the fatigue that I know is set in amongst the people. Okay, let's take a look and see what you guys have got to say. We want to hear your questions, your comments, and or your concerns. Let's take a look and see what we've got here. We've got here, Omar C says, I heard a Shabab are about to take Somalia. I've heard the same thing. We're working to try to see if we can do some interview with some of the brothers out there. We want to understand what's going on. As it's known, I have had many issues with the way that Shabab had been conducting itself several years ago, but we are taking a look to see how they're conducting their affairs now, and we'll try to see if we can get someone on in the coming bit of time. We'll take a look, inshallah. Okay, next we've got Mr. Bilal from Kurdi, who says, how is the progress with the SDF groups? What's the issue of the foreign fighters of the PKK groups? Okay, first issue is that the Kurdish aligned militia forces are supposed to disband and join the government of Ahmed al-Shara. However, that hasn't happened as of yet. We'll hear one day that a new graduate class of fighters have just commenced, but then a few days later we'll be hearing statements like, well, we're going to disband and so on and so forth. So they're conflicting statements, but you got to understand something. The Kurdish forces, militia forces, control a third of the country. That's not a small amount. And they don't seem to be making the real steps and strides to disarm, dismantle their situation, and then to join in the government of Ahmed al-Shara. It doesn't look like that. We're following it up. The agreement does have a phasing period, so we're not saying that it's dead, it's not going to happen, but it doesn't have all the hallmarks that this is going to be as was scripted in the agreement between Madloom Abdi, who is the leader of the Kurdish militia forces, and Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, Ahmed al-Shara. We're going to follow it up. We're going to be taking a look at it. As for the foreign fighters amongst the PKK, well, I'm not sure about that, where they would go, how that would work. So I can't say. I can't comment on that. Now, okay, next up. Okay, isn't this clearly PSYOP? Who are these new Kata'ib at Daif? Seems clear as day what's going on here. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it does seem clear to me that how you're going to demand an area where there's no military force and then want to bomb the country when some militants are firing from those territories. What's more, people have got to understand something. In those southern territories, the IDF makes sometimes daily incursions into Syrian territory. I'm going to say this again. They make sometimes daily incursions into Syrian territory and came as far up as Newa. Newa is a city, most people probably know Imam al-Nawawi, but that's where Newa is. That's 20 kilometers from the Israeli-Syrian border. So they come in and out, in and out. They set up checkpoints, they steal cattle, they raid homes and arrest people. So without a deterrent for rogue forces coming in, then how is there supposed to be order on that border? It's just not clear. So it seems clear to me that this is a direction that the Israeli government wants to go in, and we'll have to wait and see how it's going to turn out. Okay. Infinite Beast said, did they ever get you your license to film, or are they still withholding that from you? I don't know if the word withholding is the word for it. I just think I'm just not going to get it. I'm looked at as somewhat of a dissident because I'm critical, and that's something that most Arab governments are not very much in favor of. But I've got to be me at the end of the day. I didn't come here because I was a groupie for any group or anything of that nature. I came here because it was the right thing to do. The Muslims needed a journalistic voice, and sometimes that journalistic voice, sometimes it goes against the power structure, and sometimes you get put in prison for it, sometimes you get beat up for it, sometimes you get killed for it. So, but we have to do what's right. That's just what this whole thing has been about from the start, to do what's right. All righty, let's take a look and see what we have here. Okay, Infinite Beast also asks a question, and he says, have you seen any movement on the ground to lift the sanctions? Any signs of change, or too early to tell? Too early to tell. People are optimistic, but I'm not going to say I'm not optimistic because I'm not. I'm just not going to say I'm not optimistic. Why? Because I understand the Americans. Issue number one, the Israelis never would have bombed Syrian territory if they knew the Americans weren't okay with it. Americans haven't said anything. That's what the Americans do. They play this good cop, bad cop thing with Israel when they're all both one and the same. Israel is firing what kind of rockets and bombs? American-made ones. Could the Americans turn it off at any time? Absolutely. Could Israel survive without America? Absolutely, positively not. But Donald Trump will come and shake hands and so on and so forth. And I've really got to tell you something. I haven't sat down and spoken to Abu Muhammad Jolani or Ahmed al-Shara in quite some time. But I wish I could give a message to him. And it would be as follows. The Americans are not your friends. And they are very keen to make sure and to make certain that your mission is an abysmal failure. I will say that again. Their mission is to make sure that your mission is an abysmal failure. The sanctions, which were partially lifted, I'm going to say partially lifted because they haven't been removed. They've been given 180-day waivers. After 180 days, they have to go back to Washington and to renew it. That means that if you don't do the things that they want you to do, then they're not going to they're not going to renew the waiver. That's part of the game. So I'm sure, Ahmed Shara, you understand that. You understand the situation here, but you've got to understand something else. They've got a genocide that's taking place just not too far in that direction. It's bankrolled, backed, funded, and politically protected by the same Washington entity. Do you really believe that they would want to see you be successful and a strong Syria on Israel's borders? It's not even conceivable. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Now, okay, let's take a look and see what else we have here. Next up, Junaid Ahmed says, will Syria develop their air defense system to prevent an airstrike? Without strong air defense, Israel will do that future again and again. I certainly hope that they will. Developing an air defense system isn't something that happens overnight. The Turks have a pretty good air defense system, but will we see that here in Syria? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. But I hope that they are working on it because it's going to be needed. Okay, next. Rib Pulric says, I feel it's the Zionists testing the international response. I don't think that they're testing the international response, with all due respect, because they already know. The international response, the international community, they were cool with Bashar al-Assad. What were they going to do? They're not coming. They didn't come to help the Muslims. They didn't come to help rescue them. They knew what Bashar al-Assad was about and what he was doing. All they would do is just say things like condemnation, bad Assad, go lay down. So if they didn't work to remove Bashar al-Assad, do you think that they're going to work hard to stop Benjamin Netanyahu? Well, they haven't stopped him so far in what he's doing out there in the Gazan territories and in the West Bank. So I don't think that they're testing any waters. I do think that they may be trying to see what kind of defenses are there. I think that they're testing the Turks to see what they might be saying and doing. Those are some of the tests that I see might be more likely, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay, next. Okay, we've got here Amir Zakaria, who says, what if Ashara insisted to make peace with Israel, though they are still invading Syria and should people ignore him and fight Israel? Okay. All right. Well, the first issue is that the Israelis have no history of honoring their agreements. I will say this again. The Israelis have no history of honoring their agreements. So this is the first issue. The second issue is that should they, if he insisted to make peace with them, well, as he is the leader of these territories, that's his decision to make. Now, whether I'm going to come and then say, "I'll forget about that guy," well, I just don't think that that's my place to say that. If the scholars of Islam weigh in on it, then maybe that would be a different case. But that's not my place to say that they should ignore his orders or so on and so forth. So I'm not prepared to go there. But I don't think it's going to end up making a difference. The Israelis are not going to stop. They're going to take more territory. They're going to continue to move closer. They're going to bomb more sites inside of Syria. They want to keep Syria poor and weak and destitute and dependent on their strongest ally, which is Washington. That's what they want. That is the strategy. I think that it was a big mistake. It is a big mistake to allow American companies and their mercenaries and their CIA operatives by default into the country unrestricted. I just think that was just the wrong thing to do. Some people say, well, how are the people going to live? How are they going to get along? And so on and so forth. Look, you've got the Taliban in Afghanistan. Their sanctions are still on them, and they are building dams. They're working with other countries that want to help Afghanistan grow for whatever reasons they actually want to do it, like the Chinese and so on and so forth. We all know about the Uyghurs and their plight, but life doesn't stop with the Washington being pleased with you or not. Now, I understand that the Syrians are weary, but so are the Afghans. Fighting America for 21 years, that's not easy. And the country wasn't in great shape even before then. But I don't think that the Afghan people are better than the Syrian people, nor do I think the Syrian people are better than the Afghan people. So I think that the coming days will be difficult, but at the end of the day, just saying that you're tired and you want to just work and just earn money and just open up stores, that's not going to change the dynamic when your enemy is intent on destroying you. Nah. Okay, next up, we've got any news, this is from The Base, who says, any news about Abu Yahya Jazairi and Abu Shu'aib Misri? No, there isn't. There isn't any news, and that is most distressing and disappointing. We're talking about a new country, knew this, knew that, but they're kind of stuck in the old judicial system of torture, indefinite detention, and that's the reality of the situation. These two individuals have been imprisoned for quite some time, and there needs to be some real change in that regard. Now, Awadio says, are you seeing or feeling any pressure from the authorities in Syria for your stances? Or is there freedom of speech? If the latter, it would be a real beacon of hope for the region. Well, we're going to have to wait and see. Am I feeling any heat from it? I get messages from time to time indirectly, but I don't have direct communication with them. I know people from them and so on and so forth, but it's been some time where they were unwilling to do any interviews with me. As I said, I'm seen as a dissident, so they don't do interviews with me, and that's their decision to make. I am obligated by Allah and my covenant with Allah to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. And that entails being a journalist and making clear to you the situations which are taking place as I see them and as I know them to be. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I get it right 100% of the time, because nobody gets it right 100% of the time. But I do think that we take due diligence and effort to verify stories. Most of the stories that are out there that other people are reporting, we don't report them. Why? Because I can't prove it. And if I don't have a sufficient amount of reason to believe that such and such a thing is credible, I just don't report it, even if other people are reporting it. And Allah knows best. Okay. All right. Oh yeah, do you know anything about fighter Ahmed Mansour? He was calling for toppling the Egyptian regime, but was sadly silenced. I believe he was released. But I have to check that. The next time we come on air, I will give you a definite response to that. But I believe he was released, and Allah knows best. Okay, we've got Kareem Cock here, who says, what do you think? Will the future next 5 years bring to the Muslims? And do you think we need more time to overcome these tyrants? And do you see this brighter future in Syria or other countries? I think that the future is bright. But I didn't say the future is going to be easy. People are waking up. People are understanding. All these democratic systems and international bodies and human rights organizations and ICC, ICJ, ABC, 1, 2, 3, it ain't doing nothing for the Muslims. That's real. We got to talk business here, brothers and sisters. It's not doing anything for the Muslims. It didn't do anything when Bashar al-Assad was killing his people, and half the country had to run away to other countries, and they were internally and externally displaced. They didn't do anything about it. When Imran Khan, who was democratically elected, got run out, what did the international community really do for Imran Khan? Nothing. Didn't do anything. When Mohammed Morsi was democratically elected in Egypt, may Allah have mercy on him, and he was taken down by a coup, which countries made sure that there were so many sanctions on Egypt that they had to release him? Nobody. So I'm saying to you, international law, international criminal justice system, international human rights, it's all a bunch of baloney. It's nothing. It's zero. It's false. It's fake. That's what it is. We as Muslims have got to have our own standards, which is the Quran and the Sunnah, and hold fast to those principles. That's our standard, not this international garbage, which did nothing for the people in Gaza. You've got a genocide which is on TV and advertised to the entire world on a daily basis, and countries around the world are doing nothing more than light condemnations or talking about that we're going to talk about. If they don't stop, we're going to talk about whether we should talk about putting some sanctions on them so that they can't get their bread and cars or something along those lines. Nobody's talking about a weapons embargo, and bearing something in mind that if they stop giving Israel weapons today, the war doesn't stop today. They have stockpiles to last them for months, and they could continue at the same pace that they currently are. So don't think that just because a weapons embargo takes place today that it's an automatic stop. So brothers and sisters, the joke is on us. Okay. All right. Okay, on one side, okay, Jet Doodle says, on one side, Syria gets okays from the West. On the other hand, relentless harassment from the Israelis. That's because they're one and the same. This is what I want Ahmed Shara to understand. The Israelis and the Americans are in lockstep. They are one. Remember all this talk about how Trump's not happy with Netanyahu and so on and so forth. Dude, we were not hearing any of this stuff before a week before he went to the Gulf and got $3 trillion. I'm sorry, more than he got. Yes, $3 trillion in investment promises from Qatar, 1.2 trillion, the United Arab Emirates, 1.4 trillion, and 600 billion in 4 years from the state of Saudi Arabia. Oh, wait a minute, we didn't even talk about the $400 million plane that he got as a gift. And all he had to do was just a week prior and just say, I'm not happy with Netanyahu. Don't know what he's doing out there. Bad Netanyahu, go lay down. And then he shows up in the Gulf and it's like, oh, look at this $400 million plane, 1.2 trillion in investments, 1.4 trillion in investments, $600 billion. Brothers and sisters, are you understanding the numbers that are taking place here? What could $1.2 trillion do in investments in a country that's trying to do something for the Muslims like Afghanistan? What could that investment do there? What could $1.4 trillion do in the country of Syria if they wanted to do and implement Sharia? What could that do? What kind of jobs would $600 billion bring to an impoverished nation? Brothers and sisters, you have to know how they play the game. Okay, Infinite Beast says, I see your Patreon page has been removed. Where can we go to support you? Yes, brothers and sisters, I'm glad that you asked this question because I would like very much for you, brothers and sisters, to go to our crowdfunding page, which is medina.com/voices of truth. Voices of Truth is a project that I am spearheading where we are documenting the war crimes that were committed by the Assad regime so that people for years to come will have clear understanding of what took place, because if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. Take a brief look at one of the interviews that we did, because that's what we're doing. We're interviewing people all around the country, rich ones, poor ones, those who were in Assad's prisons, loved ones who never returned back to their families. Take a brief look at one of the interviews that we did. Here it is.
فهم مات فشو كانت الإجراءات لاتخاذ الميتين من السجن؟
هلا بالنسبة حسون ابن حسون حظه هو ميت، حظه حلو انه باثناء كان سيارته وقت توفى وانتقل الى رحمة الله كان سيارة الموتى موجودة بقلب الفرع، يعني طالعوه بنفس الساعة، بس غيره يضل 3 ايام، يعني بموت يوم الاربعاء في فرع المنطقة بضل معنا بالجماعية او بالمنفردة، لانه انا كنت اوقات يحطونا بالجماعية واوقات يحطونا بالمنفردة، يضل معنا الاربعاء، الخميس، الجمعة، السبت الساعة 12 الظهر يجي ياخذوا، وكان شهر 6 و7 و8، وبتعرف الحر والشوب والهاي، اوقات التقى 3 ميتين 4 ميتين بالمهجع ممنوع تشيلون، وقت يجوا بدهم يشيلون هاتوا لنا الفطايس، يعني حتى انه الميت ما خالص من لسانهم الهاي يضطروا يشيلون، يعني ايمت من مات الشخص لازم يضل يوم كامل.
So this is what the people had to deal with. These are the stories that we're documenting. But we need your help. We need gasoline. We need fuel. We need salaries. We need so many different things. And if you brothers and sisters could help us out with $10, $50, $100, anything that you could do, wallahi, we would be so grateful for it. And if you can't do that and you can make dua for us, then we'd be grateful for that too. But please do visit our crowdfunding page. That's at medina.com/voices of truth. Okay, let's see if we can take 1 or 2 more, and let's see what we've got here. Okay, we've got the bass back again. It says, may Allah keep you safe and guide you to goodness and keep you away from falsehood. Islamic Union Group. Ameen, ameen. All right. Let's see. Okay, we've got here, let's see. Okay, don't know what that's about. Okay, last one we'll say is Palestinian Viva. who says, do you think pan-Islamism of all Muslim majority countries uniting, no matter how deviant they are, like Iran and Egypt, is possible, be somewhat of a force against foreign policy? No. I mean, look, I mean, it'd be nice, you know what I'm saying, if we could all sit around and sing some songs, some Islamic songs, and we're all going to be on the same page, but it's not real. It wasn't real in the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, Umar ibn Khattab. It wasn't possible in the time of Uthman ibn Affan or Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhum ajma'in. It wasn't possible. It's not real now. Now, after having said that, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to have palatable relations with everybody. But there are some people that we have to understand that it's going to be tough. That doesn't mean be hostile to them if they're not being hostile to you. For example, Iran. Iran is hostile to Sunni Muslims. They can't seem to hit the side of a barn when they're aiming for Israelis. But when they're aiming for Sunni Muslims here in Syria, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. They can't seem to miss. That's the type of stuff that, you know, you got to look at it and say, there's something not right there. So sitting down, talking to people like that and all is always a possibility. You can always sit down and talk, but don't expect a lot out of those talks when they are working so hard to finance those people like Bashar al-Assad, who was destroying the people here in Syria, and he couldn't have done it without Iranian help. He couldn't do it. So what are you going to accomplish at this stage of the game by uniting with the Iranians? Uniting with the Iranians to do what exactly? But there are other groups, I would say, like the Houthis, who are Iranian-backed to some extent, not in the same depth as they were just some years ago. But once again, we could have a conversation with them, discuss with them. You might like what they have to say, you might not. But I think that there are some possibilities with those satellite Shia-oriented groups that maybe we could have a conversation with much more than the Iranians. And Allah knows best. So that's it, brothers and sisters. We're going to leave it here. I am your host, Bilal Abdul Kareem. This has been the BAK Show. Please do visit our crowdfunding page. That's medina.com/voices of truth. I am Bilal Abdul Kareem. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.